Hello and welcome back to another episode here at License to Fix. So in this episode, as the open title showed there, we're going to be doing some wire repair. Just real quickly wanted to test the ohms on this one. I'm quite certain it's bad. I've already done a little pre-inspection. I see some wires broken, but just to verify, we'll do a little ohm check across here. Should be anywhere from 4 to 4.5. Yeah, we can see that it's definitely not in that range. Plus this thing's a little dirty, so it's probably not going to make a great connection. Looks like we had about a 6, almost 7 there. Yeah, something shorted out somewhere along the lines. We're getting 2.5, which is very unusual. Could be that the wire is actually touching the core of the armature itself, which is making it read a little funny. So we'll take a closer look here and see if we can identify exactly what's going on. Try to zoom in on this as close as I can. These things are so small, it's hard to really get a feel for it. I mean, I've got some pretty fat fingers as it is, and trying to really identify this thing, I have to use special glasses to be able to even see it. So apologies for the shaky camera. You can kind of see a little bit of my glasses right there, kind of covering it up. But they're basically just a cheap set of hobbyist, like jeweler's type glasses with various different magnifications on it. But here I'm trying to see exactly what's broken. Once I figure that out, we'll see if we can get a little closer with the camera and show that to you. Looks like we got at least a couple of wires broken here. Usually if it's on the outer wind, they're not too bad. You can just fish those through, unwind them a single coil, and you're not going to see too much variance. I did notice on the initial inspection, someone has worked on this previously. I saw some solder buildup on some of the contacts that doesn't look factory. Usually, yeah, you can see a piece of wire right there, just broken loose. I think that one's on the outer winding, so that one should be too big a deal. Matter of fact, I think both of them are broken. So now it's a matter of just trying to fish those back through and see what we've got to work with. But yeah, I did notice that there was some additional solder on some of these tabs. So I don't know if someone had tried to or attempted to do some repair at some point and this armature's passed. Well, I got those uncoiled. That part wasn't too bad. But further inspection here, I think the two inners might be broken here too, which is a completely different challenge, especially if you're trying to salvage the original windings. Well, let's get these two prepped anyway. And what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to knock off some of that coating that they put on there. The coating helps keep the wire from shorting out against itself. And to get that coating off just makes it nice and clean. That way when you go to solder, you don't have to let it set for a long period of time to burn it off. It'll just go on and take to it and make a good connection there pretty quickly. So you have to be super gentle. These original windings, they are 50 years old, so they do get brittle over time. So you just have to be ever so careful. I have in the past broken some wires as I've been doing this, so I really don't push down too hard. I kind of just let the sandpaper fold over on the end and just use the pressure of the bend, if you will, in the sandpaper to do the work, rather than actually forcing my finger against the metal underneath the wires. Once you see it start to shine up, that's a pretty good indication. You'll see that clean copper kind of show through, and that's good enough. just trying to be ever so gentle here. Don't be making fun of my pants. That's my pajama britches right there. Got my UVA pajama britches on. You got to be comfortable when you're doing this, right? Relaxed state. This is tedious work. Yeah, these seem to be cleaning up pretty good. I think we'll be okay. Sometimes I'll try to do both at once. Sometimes I'll do one at a time. It just depends on if they're trying to cooperate or not. Biggest thing you have to be careful of, if one overlaps the other while you're trying to clean them off with sandpaper, you could run a risk of breaking one. So got those looking pretty good. So as I'm inspecting this a little closer, we can see just barely. Let's see here. Yeah, those two inners are broken too, which is going to make this repair take a little longer. So trying to save the original windings and not have to go through the process of completely rewinding this entire armature means that you need extra length on the wires. Well, unfortunately, you can't unwind it from the inside. I've been lucky enough to pull a little extra from there at time to time, but here's the thing. You run the risk of, if you can't, I'm trying to pull it a little bit here. If you put too much pressure on it and it breaks, well, then there's no other alternative. You've got to completely rewind that particular arm. And the bad part about it is it depends on which order of sequence that the armature was wound in. If it was the very last arm of the three arms, well, that might not be as bad. Hypothetically, you could use the same wire and try to just go back on there, but it's going to be creased. Again, it's been on there for 50 years. It's probably not going to lay down as flat. And if you try to pull it out, if it was either number 2 or 3 and there was overlap, well, then the problem you run into is you'd have to unwind multiple. At that point, you might as well just redo the whole thing. So let's see if we can get a little bit better picture here and you can see it. Yep, you can see those two little wires, just tiny, just kind of poking out there. In this case, what we're going to try to do, because it broke right at the edge of the plate where it would loop around and be soldered, it's going to be relatively clean there where it was previously soldered, whether they did it by heat or cleaning, whatever method they used to get that coating off of there. So what we're going to do is just touch it just a little bit with sandpaper right on the very tips of those, and then we're going to tin them. And the idea is we're talking about a single strand of wire here. So the tin itself is enough to be able to attach, well, hopefully in this case, attach extensions onto those broken wires. And if you've watched some of my previous videos, you've probably seen me do this before, where we're trying to add length enough to those wires to be able to rewrap it around the comm plate and then resolder it. So we're going to prep it by doing just a little bit of sand in here. We'll see if we get them cleaned up. And then if this works and they look pretty decent, we're going to try to move forward with tinning. So let's see how that works. So now that we've got those cleaned up, here comes the extension part. So because I rewind armatures, if you didn't know, I do sell some on eBay. You'll see those on there from time to time, and sometimes you'll see the little icon license to fix. I usually try to include a photo icon image on there, and a note to come visit the YouTube channel. But I do have wire available, and I do know the correct size to be able to add the extension. So we'll take a little strand of wire here, and we'll do the same process. So we've cleaned and tinned. Well, we've cleaned the wire on the armature. We've got it prepped and ready, and so we'll take a new piece of wire, and we'll do that same process. We'll clean it off and get it prepped for tinning as well. And once we've tinned both ends, then it's just a matter of really just joining the solder. Just getting it hot enough to make the bond between the two. Here we go, our first shot at it. So I did put just a touch of flux on these wires. I don't think you saw that part, but a little bit of flux. Put a little solder on the heating iron and soldering iron, and then I'll just take the tip and run it right through that wet solder. And once it tins over, you'll see that it's a little silver. We won't be able to see it on this video because it's so fine, but it'll be tinned over, and it'll have its coating on there, which is good. It just makes the bonding process between the new extensions and the actual wires on the armature go a little smoother. So now that we've got both pieces tinned, we're going to try to make that join. So I'll usually lay them side by side, right next to each other. And you can see I put a slight little tug on it there. So just testing that connection. And usually they'll overlap maybe 1/16 to 3/32 of an inch, so not much. And then now that I've done one, we'll flip it over, and I just use that little 4 or 5 inch piece of wire and just loop it over and do the same thing to the other one, being careful not to touch the first one. So because if you get the first one hot, it'll just disconnect on you. So it's just a matter of getting the right position and the angle on it. So you got to figure that out. And the things move around so much, it can be a little tricky at times. Might take a couple of attempts here to get it to connect. Usually once they touch and you pull that iron away, it doesn't take but a split second and they'll make a connection. And if they do, then I just give it a little pull test. Feels snug there, then I feel very confident about it, because when we go to wrap it, that piece that actually overlaps will be laying flat on the comm plate, and we'll do a little something to help pin that down. So once we go to solder, yeah, here's a close-up shot of it. So those wires have now been extended, and it's so fine you can't even see it. But the pieces that are joined are actually just over the comm plate itself. And there you go. Now we've got extra length on those inside wires. So now that we've got that there, we've got all the wire length we need to be able to rewrap this thing around the tab. And be ever so careful. So I'll start with the extension wires, because if they break, whatever, we can just start over. And because they are now soldered, they're going to be a little bit more rigid. So once I start this loop around the second time, ideally what we want to do is put the second wire around it to kind of hold it in place. Make sure it's not going to move on us. And then we can look at just using a pair of needle nose pliers, and because it's more rigid, we just take it and squeeze that down just a little bit against the comp plate and make sure it's nice and flat. You still want to be delicate because you're still fooling with two wires that are 50 years old, older than 50 years old. These things are made in 1970, 71, 72-ish range. And the heat cycles impact them too, so that's got something to do with it. I usually like to do 2 wraps around just to make sure we've got plenty on there. Plus 2 if you got to take it back apart for some reason in the future, whatever the case may be. Then you've got a little extra. But once they're tin like that, they do get brittle. More so than just having a bare wire. So you got to keep that in mind if you try to unsolder and resolder. If you get to pulling or fooling with them, it creates a brittle state, and you can just bend it like if you were taking a piece of metal and bending it back and forth. It'll eventually snap off. Same principle here. They'll just break. So now we've got those wrapped around there. Basically all we got to do is get this soldered in place, and I think we'll be really, really close to having it all back together. But you can see the tin part was just right there at the outer edge, right before it starts to turn and go under. And we don't want those to move. Once we go to put heat on this thing, the heat's going to transfer down the wire. So we might do a little something extra once we're satisfied with how the wires are laying across the tab. Do a little something extra to hold them in place. What I'm doing now is just making sure that the wires are all the way up onto the comm plate. So here what I'm doing is putting a little bit of glue on the backside. I'm going to build it up kind of around those wires that are coming in from both directions and attach them to the comm plate itself. Glue them to the comm plate so they don't move, they don't wiggle. Once you put heat on them, they have a tendency to flex and move around because whatever the solder is already pre-existing on the comm plate itself, the wire is going to naturally kind of sink into it. So they're going to flex and try to move around. So if we do this, it'll pin them down, keep them from moving, and we reduce the risk of those extensions coming apart. You see the little blue light. I fell in love with UV glue. This stuff is fantastic. It doesn't hold as strong as super glue, I think, in the long term, but for little projects here and there, UV glue does an amazing job. You can put it where you want. You've got working time, and you hit it with that UV light, and it dries up, and it does a pretty good job. Its bonding strength is not quite as good as traditional super glue, but it's pretty close enough for working on little stuff like this. So I put that in place, and now it's dry. I don't have to wait for it. It's good to go. I don't have to worry about my fingers sticking to it, which is always a problem working on something this small. So again, we'll put a little flux across here, across these new wires. Make sure it's good and clean what we're soldering to. And we'll get it soldered on there and see how it does. Well, there we go. We got it soldered and attached now, so I feel pretty good about that. Everything stayed in place underneath it. We wanted to be pinned down. So that was a successful attempt at getting those wires back on. And it's looking pretty good here. And of course, we got a little extra wire. We'll get that off. I'm just, at this point, kind of debating on which way to go about it. I could snip it off. I could break it off. Breaking it off usually will result in a tighter pin down to the armature, where if you cut it, you still have a little sprig hanging off. So I usually just give it a little wiggle, and they'll usually break off pretty close to wherever it's firmly attached. Plus, it kind of shows me how well it was attached. So if I got any connection issues there, I'll know it. There you go, a little wiggle on the wire, and it'll break off. And you can see how little it takes to actually break these things. Of course, the new wire is going to be a little bit more difficult. We had 2 old and 2 new. There it goes, just like that. Now, I'll give these new ones the same treatment. And there we are. Let's do a little final inspection on it here. Seems to be good. I don't see anything loose. You saw there I went ahead and glued down the other 3 too, right? So all is well. The idea is we're going to glue these other ones down, and hopefully we won't have the same situation and predicament as we did with this one. They'll all be attached, not flexing and bending. So again, UV glue works wonders. Just put a little bit there on the outer edge. So now I'm just going to give it a little ohm check, see how it tests. Now keep in mind, this thing might not ohm exactly perfect. Again, someone had fooled with it previously. Generally, when I've taken a wind off, I've not seen that change the ohm rating more than 0.1 from one comm set to the next. With this one, because it's been tampered with before, who knows? So 4.1, 4.4, 4.0. So we've got some variance in there. 4041 is pretty accurate. I don't know where the 44 comes from. More resistance usually means there's more wire somewhere. So I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that. But it is testing within range. So 4.0 to 4.5 was Super 2 range. Now this tab I put on, I'm just going to knock it down just a little bit, just to make sure it's not going to drag the chassis in there. Get it down about the same as the other 2. And then we're getting really close to being ready to test this thing out in my Yard Dog chassis. We'll see how it does. Well, we're getting closer to the end, so we're going to tune down the music a little bit. And once we get ready to do the bench test, that way you can kind of hear what it sounds like. Bear with me. The chassis is old, and just use it for testing armatures, rewind, etc. So it vibrates a little bit against this old plastic track, but I think you'll be pretty satisfied with being able to hear it run and know that it works. Well, listen, I really want to thank you for watching another one of the videos. Again, like always, don't forget to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're not used to YouTube, you can just set up an account with your Gmail, subscribe, and then it'll shoot you notices once new videos drop. So be sure to do that, and I really appreciate your support. And keep an eye out for the next videos. Like I said, like, subscribe. Hit the little icon there. Should be able to set it up on the subscribe and lead you through the process if you're not already set up on YouTube. Here's a close-up of the armature. I think she turned out pretty good. We'll get this back to the owner, and I think they'll be pretty pleased with the results.